The Washing Machine is a giallo released in 1993, directed by Ruggero Deodato.
It's a tale of three sisters, or so they say they're sisters anyway. I'm not quite convinced by that. It opens with one of them bringing her lover back to their apartment that they share. They get a little bit frisky, shall we say. This is a giallo after all. He appears to leave, and then in the night, one of the sisters wakes up and comes to the kitchen, and the washing machine's on. There appears to be sort of red liquid coming out of it, so she goes and investigates, and there's like a dismembered body appears to be of this lover. In the morning they contact the police who come round, but the body has mysteriously vanished. No one seems to be able to explain what's happened. All three sisters give different accounts of what's happened and whether anything's happened at all. So the police inspector doesn't really know what to do because there's no apparent crime, because there's no body. But what he is interested in is the three sisters, because they're all quite, how do we say, beguiling, all a little bit odd in their own way. He's intrigued by them and why they would make up something like this. Yeah, it's a sort of psychosexual drama with a bit of gore thrown in, as is the standard for giallos. They usually have the police involved in some way. They usually have some sort of gory murder and a mystery, sort of who done it. And that's what it is basically. Did this guy get murdered? And if he did, who did it? Because all of these three sisters seem to blame each other.
You're similar to me, that I haven't watched a lot of giallo in my time. I've seen bits and pieces here and there over the years, and probably the most famous of them who make giallo. Although, I mean, obviously, is it Mario Bava? He's like the original. He like started the genre off. But I mean, most of the ones I would have seen would be the Dario Argento ones.
Yeah.
Most of them are actually possibly more closer to horror than detective and mysteries and crime and stuff like that. So I can't really talk for giallo, but I have over the years seen the odd ones here and there. A little bit of background info. If you don't know, giallo is it's Italian for yellow. It's like the paper, wasn't it? The pulp, because it's like it's based on pulp stories, so that's where that term comes from. Yeah, I mean, like you say, it's got everything. It's very erotically charged, this film.
Yes.
It's psychosexual and then some. In fact, I will read this. I found this review of the film on screenanarchy.com. So they put, no doubt about it, The Washing Machine is an odd film. For a straight thriller, it is too full of gratuitous sex and seedy surroundings, but for a typical softcore film, it is actually too slick and well made. Which I thought was actually really good. I thought it was really interesting because I think the film is actually, it feels very well done.
Yeah, no, it was better than I thought it was going. I thought it was going to be really trashy and grotty, especially coming from Ruggero Deodato, because obviously, he made Cannibal Holocaust, which you don't get much more down and dirty than that, really, do you?
I had heard of this film when I was doing some reading on Cannibal Holocaust a few years ago, and I just came across this in it, because he also made, is it The House at the Edge of the Park?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen that, but apparently that's pretty horrific as well.
I saw the picture in this article I was reading. There was obviously the picture of the head, the man, the person in the washing machine, and you do look at that and you think, how the hell do you get someone in a washing machine? Although it is possible, actually. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember The Word? Remember The Word?
Yes, yeah.
That awful 90s TV show on Channel 4 with Terry Christian. They had a guy on that who got into a washing machine and went round in it. Amazing. I'd love to find. I'll have to. The clip might be on YouTube, but it was. So it is possible for a grown man to get into a washing machine.
Cool. Good to know.
It's good to know. Yeah. When it starts out, you're thinking, okay, we are in trashy territory. You've got this guy gets out of a car and he's got this like prostitute with him, and they go into her house, and then there's this like kind of seedy sex scene by the fridge, and there's like all this like food in there, and then this cat comes into it, and then there's a woman turns up sitting on the stairs, kind of. It's quite voyeuristic as well. There's a bit of voyeurism going on, and then of course she opens her legs and you're like, oh, where's this film going? But it's actually, I think it seems to be taking itself quite seriously as well. I thought he's great, the actor, the guy playing the detective, but I thought the three sisters were having the time of their lives with this. They just looked like they were having so much fun playing these kind of twisted sisters who have clearly got some dodgy stuff in their background.
I was going to say, as far as them being sisters, as I said at the start, I wasn't 100% convinced that they actually were, because there's a couple of hints that, because at one point, I think at the start when the police inspector's talking to them, one of them says, my father, and then she goes, our father, like a slip of the tongue. So I don't know whether I read too much into that. I don't know, but I don't know why. It doesn't really impact the plot particularly, whether they're sisters or not.
Ludmilla and Mary are almost quite similar. They're kind of a bit more mousy and a bit quieter. Because Vida she's like the more promiscuous at first. She's like the more promiscuous one, and obviously she works in a club. and she's this cool girl at night. And then the other two are a little bit more mousy. And I thought, well, they definitely seem like sisters. But no, I mean, obviously, as it goes into it, they're all as promiscuous as each other.
And it's obviously, by today's standards, it's completely non-PC. And in any of the sex scenes, the men keep all their clothes on at all times. So.
Okay, there's an amazing sex scene on the stairs, and the position she is in. I'm like, how are you not falling over and like breaking your neck? Because it's just, and it's not even like dangerous in the fact that she's a crazy woman.
It's just irresponsible.
Very irresponsible. Yeah, nothing like that. What's that other famous sex scene in a film on a staircase? Body of Evidence.
Oh God.
Willem Dafoe and Madonna on the staircase, but that looks safer. Anyway.
Speaking of that, actually, because obviously that came after Basic Instinct.
Yeah.
Well, after Basic Instinct came out, there was a bit of a trend for these sort of sexually charged thrillers, and it felt a bit Basic Instinct to me, because obviously you've got the detective who's trying to figure out if these people have actually committed this murder or not, and obviously then getting involved with the potential suspects. That's immediately what it reminded me of.
So although it's an Italian film, it's actually shot in Budapest, and Budapest looks.
Oh yeah, the buildings and the architecture, were great.
Yeah, the architecture and kind of the cameras really like placed in really interesting ways. I mean, I don't know a lot about Ruggero Deodato, but he's actually an interesting filmmaker. Like you said, his most famous film is Cannibal Holocaust, which is... I've seen it a few times, and it's a great film, whatever you think about it.
As horrific as it is, and obviously the animal cruelty notwithstanding, putting that aside, it is... I don't know, an important film. I mean, it's influential and certainly notorious, obviously. Much like this, you go, if you haven't seen it, you go in expecting something really trashy, not particularly well made, but it is well made, and it is a compelling film. As horrific as a lot of it is, it stands up today. I think it's not one of these sort of grotty little films made for a quick buck at the time, and has sort of fallen by the wayside. It still is powerful today.
It's fun. It's got some great performances, actually. I think, like I said before, I think the three women playing the three sisters are just having so much fun. I mean, there's quite... We won't do spoilers, but there's a great moment. They've got some great lines in it. There was a great line I wrote down. You never seen a pair of cymbals? That just cracked me up. She's standing at the door playing these cymbals, and I just thought, what a great line. Yeah, I mean, give it a watch.
Yeah, no, it's definitely worth checking out, I think. I mean, there are some plot threads that maybe kind of don't really go anywhere. I mean, the fact... It's a little bit of a spoiler, but because it doesn't really go anywhere, does it matter? The inspector has like this secret cupboard in his apartment filled with like bondage gear.
Oh my God, yeah, that was the most...
But then that doesn't go anywhere. Like, he's obviously got secret, I don't know, fetishes, but that's not really explored in any way. And it just comes out of nowhere.
Well, he's with his girlfriend, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he's like, things are starting to change a little bit, and she kind of cracks on that he's maybe having an affair, and then he's almost like saying, there's lots of things you don't know about me, and he opens up his cupboard, and there's all this like S&M gear in there, and you're like, bloody hell, where did all that come from? It almost makes him as seedy as the three girls.
Well, I mean, maybe that's the point. I don't know, maybe that's why, because obviously
they're leading him astray.
It doesn't take much persuasion, does it, for them to lead him astray. And maybe that's, then you realise why, because he's obviously already a bit of a perv. Or not, maybe just, obviously he does have a lot of secrets, or I don't know, he's not maybe as straight-laced as he first appears, I don't know. It didn't really add anything.
No, and there's a couple of things near the end where I kind of got a little bit confused about what was going on.
Well, there's a scene where somebody looks like they're getting strangled. Nothing happens there, right? It's all a bit odd.
There's also quite a bit of confusion because there's lots of dream sequences going on.
Yeah.
So there are certain, the first time one of the sisters sees the body in the washing machine, it turns out then to be she's had a dream, and in fact what you're actually seeing, or what you think you're seeing, because there's lots of lies being told as well, and it was quite clever because the police are there and you see like a red clothing on the ground, and you're like, oh well, that's the blood she saw. So there's some interesting things like that going on. But the trouble when you bring dreams and lies into a film, you start to possibly go down that that kind of rabbit hole where you're going to start getting confused and things like that. But if you can kind of throw out the confusion a little bit, it's great fun, and it's also, I mean, it's very atmospheric. I think it's really, like I said before, it looks great, and it has a great score as well by Claudio Simonetti, and he was the keyboard player in Goblin. And Goblin, obviously famous for Suspiria soundtracks, one of the greatest soundtracks of all time. I think it's just absolutely terrifying, that score.
Obviously, it's a 90s film. I think that puts it in modern giallo. I don't know, because I think most of the sort of classic giallos are from the 70s and 80s, but it doesn't look like a 90s film. It could have been filmed in the 80s. There's nothing to really place it in the 90s particularly. I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with where it's set. Budapest, as we mentioned, the architecture. There's a lot of old buildings. The apartment they live in, looks quite old. Almost makes it timeless.
But I think it's also because it's kind of early 90s, and of course you're in Europe, and I think it's fair to say, certainly in some of Europe, because obviously, Europe had been, much of Europe was still, I mean, a lot of it was quite isolated in kind of end of the 80s into the 90s. And I think maybe their fashions also maybe took a little bit of time to catch up into the 90s. And I think a lot of the fashions in there feel quite 80s. There's a great scene in an art gallery. It's crazy.
Oh,
scene.
yeah.
It's a little bit offensive to blind people, that scene. There's a shot of a guy who I thought was from the Pet Shop Boys. I thought it was because he had like the hair and the glasses. It was amazing. Their whole fashions felt quite 80s as opposed to being a 90s film. So it doesn't feel like a British 90s or an American 90s film of that period.
I think one thing we should also mention is the dubbing, which of course, again, is not uncommon in these films. Everyone looks like they're speaking English, but of course I think, the guy who plays the inspector is French. At least one of the actresses playing one of the sisters is Italian. So obviously you've got a variety of accents going on. So if you're going to place it in one place, then everyone kind of speaks the same way, don't they? In some sort of generic kind of soft European accent. It's not quite. I don't think they were trying to go for American. I don't think. No one has a particularly thick accent, shall we say?
No, and I think that's the trouble with the kind of. I mean, the dubbing on these films, obviously it's there for a reason. It's obviously become a kind of a cliche and a thing about those films that they are. I mean, you look at all the Argento films and Fucci films and all the kind of spaghetti westerns, all those great films, and it's really interesting because they kind of, a lot of times the acting comes across as quite bad. It's because it's the dubbing. The dubbing is the voice artist is not great. Remove the bad voicing. I thought they looked like they were acting it quite convincingly.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't as off-putting as it sometimes can be.
So obviously we are in quarantine. Voila, we're not together. So we are picking films that are on Amazon Prime, and that's where we saw this. And in fact, we saw the shameless release of it.
Yeah, they've got several of the films that they've released on Blu-ray and DVD that are currently streaming on Amazon. So yeah, I mean, obviously you could search for The Washing Machine, or if you just put in Shameless, it should bring up all their releases on there. And they're easy to spot because they've all got like a yellow outline around the thumbnail. It was only after I watched it and I looked it up, because I just assumed they'd released it on Blu-ray, but they haven't. It's only been out on DVD, so I think that's probably why it doesn't look that great, because I guess it's not been remastered or anything. Yeah, it's not one that seems to be widely available. They released it a few years ago on DVD, not really any features on it to speak of. But it does come in like a limited edition metal tin to sort of replicate a washing machine, and I think it's got like a window in it, and then the disc sort of sits in this window, and I think you could obviously spin it round if you wanted to make it look like the body is spinning around. Anyway, the Shameless one does seem to be the easiest one to find. I couldn't find any release in the US for it, but it might, whether it's on Prime over there, not sure. Obviously, Shameless is a UK label, so probably not even on DVD in the US, I guess. I don't know. Might be one of those ones that you can only pick up on VHS over there or something.
So that was The Washing Machine, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below.
Yep, hit that subscribe button there, and don't forget to push the bell for notifications. There's some other videos to check out here. Come and find us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and come back next week for another video.